supports and helps to develop the tech sector across the North region. So flying the flag for tech across the North, but also helping to develop the ecosystem right across the North. I'll explain a bit about me first of all, and go into some thoughts about what's happening in Manchester right now and where what we do fits into that. Prior to Tech North, I worked with The Next Web, which some of you might have seen online. It's a site that writes about startups and big tech companies from right around the world. I joined them back in 2009, writing one post a day just about bits and pieces. The first post I ever wrote was about Google Wave, which was incredibly hot at the time. It's the day Google Wave launched at Google I/O. I wrote this piece about how it was the next big thing kind of thing, and then of course it went nowhere. It was hot for a while, so I started off part-time, went full-time, and was European editor, then managing editor, then editor-in-chief, and then editor at large. Through all that time, I was based in Manchester, but we had a team right around the world, and really enjoyed that job. I got to the Web Summit and all the big conferences around the world. That was great, but I always had a place in my heart for what was happening locally, and so I would, whenever I could, I'd get a Manchester company on the site. I'd write about Manchester companies and what was happening here. We were just actually talking before this started about thinking back to 2012. Doug and I, we were talking about 2012 when I did a TEDx talk, basically TEDx Manchester, and I'd been asked with 24 hours notice to replace somebody, and so I got up and did this prepared at the last minute ramble about how there were tech companies in Manchester, but there wasn't anything you could call a tech scene. There wasn't anything coherent around it, and then there was lots of companies quietly doing things all over the place, but they didn't seem to talk to each other much. And there were developer meetups, and there was like one tech entrepreneurship meetup a month, and the same people every time seemed to go to that. The same kind of 10 people or 15, 20 people would go to that every month, and nothing seemed to change. And then, just in the last 4 or 5 years, things have really changed. And you've seen places like this open. Doug and Sean is around somewhere back there, and I co-founded this place. And this is just one now of a number of co-working spaces that have opened. And you get the feeling now there's a real community in Manchester, and people wanting to come back here who moved away. I know people abroad who said, I want to move to Manchester, which is a fantastic thing to hear. They want to move to Manchester for the tech scene. And so it's great to see how things are evolving, and how an event like this 4 years ago, we were saying like maybe 5 people would turn up for the first one, so we've had to put our extra chairs tonight. So it's great to see how things are evolving. So I was at The Next Web and saw all this changing, and I was at a point where I'd been there 7 years. I wanted to change, so I joined Tech North back in May this year, and really an opportunity to get involved with helping to develop things further. Tech North was announced a couple of years ago by Nick Clegg, back when he was the Deputy Prime Minister. He wanted to do something for the North, being a Sheffield MP, and so this was an organisation set up to promote and develop tech in the North. It launched in September last year, and we've done a bunch of different things. I'll run through some of them in a bit, but I think we've come along at a time when tech is more important than ever, where tech is the new manufacturing, where tech is the new industry, and it's not just this thing that's being done by a few geeks, or it's just being this thing that's being done in the East End of London by some trendy hipsters with their startups. It's, that's not how I think of startups, but that's how some people think of startups, as a trendy thing. It's not at all. Yesterday I was in Oldham, where Wyra are setting up a space. Now Wyra are Telefonica's accelerator, and they are known for being based in some of the big tech cities around Europe and around the world, and they have an accelerator in London and all sorts of other places around the world, and they're opening in Oldham. And it's like, what's going on there? And the reason is, there's no reason why anywhere in the world people can't create a great tech idea, and there's no reason why they can't build it from there. And as long as they think globally and they think outside their local area. I was talking to someone from Liverpool the other day who was saying, like, I run my company from Liverpool, but I know that I can't do everything in Liverpool. I have to go out to London, or I have to go out to New York to find clients and find investment, but Liverpool is my home. So I think people are realising that and waking up to the fact that you can do this anywhere, and so we really want to help that across the north. I'll just quickly mention some of the things that we do. So one of the first things that Tech North announced last year was Northern Stars, which is a startup competition, and it was to find 10 companies that would be the Northern Stars for the first year of Tech North. And those 10 companies that won that, they got to go to all sorts of different events. So there was they had stands at TechCrunch Disrupt in London, and the stands were right next to the entrance to the stage area, so everyone had to walk past. One of the teams actually ended up getting investment from people they met there, which was great. So it was a great program. So the teams went to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, pitched to investors at Bloomberg in London. So some really great opportunities there. Then we've been running the second iteration of that this year. The final for that is on the 17th. At Old Granada Studios here in Manchester, so check the Tech North website and you can get free tickets for that. Worth coming along and hearing 20 pitches from startups, and 10 will win and go to do all sorts of exciting things, including appearing at the with a stand at the next web conference in Amsterdam. So I wonder how that was arranged. Then another thing that we do, Founders Network, which is really great if you're an early stage company and maybe you're great at the tech side of things, but you haven't thought about business. I was talking to a tech entrepreneur today, and she's got a product and she's developing it, and she's always thought about the product side of it and what she wanted to build, but she'd never really thought about the business side. And she was like, I'm learning really quickly how to do all this, and about investment and vesting schedules for shares and all that kind of thing. And Founders Network is designed to explain all of that to early stage entrepreneurs. And there are events around the north every month. So we have one in the northwest, one in the northeast, one in Yorkshire and Humber every single month. And so it's worth signing up for that. And then you'll get details of each event every month. And so we've got plans for a bigger event next year around that as well. So well worth looking into, especially if you're an early stage founder. Talent and skills is a big area. Obviously, people always talk about there not being enough coders and things like that. And here in the north, the problem, maybe some people would think that the problem is there aren't enough coders, and that's certainly the case. But certainly because the fact is there are so many companies with jobs, and they're really wanting. It's not that there are no jobs at all. It's like there are just too many jobs. So what we're trying to do is to change that. That's with a range of different things. We've just hired our talent and skills person, Kirsty Stiles. You might see her around speaking at events and things. She's someone else who I used to work with at the Next Web, and has made the shift from journalist to doing this, and she's really enthusiastic about it. The first thing she's doing with that is taking a delegation down to Silicon Milk Roundabout in London, which is a big jobs fair, tech jobs fair in London, and that's later this month. And we're going to have people from Manchester and all sorts of different cities across the north saying, London's great for jobs, but look at all the jobs available up north. So we're trying to get more people to move up here and to consider jobs in the north. And there will be lots more happening around talent and skills soon. Investment is obviously a big one that lots of people talk about. So one thing we've been developing is a co-investment fund. The idea there is that public money will be paired with private investment, so that private investors are more inclined to invest because there's more money alongside the money they want to put into it. That's worked very well in London and in other places. So this should be really good. It's currently sitting in central government, and we hope to hear about that in the future. Lots of other things going on around investment as well that we'll be able to announce soon. Content. I hate that word, which is why I put it in inverted commas. Content is the most horrible word. It means anything online, doesn't it? People say, oh yes, what's your content strategy? But then that just means like you're thinking, oh, we're just throwing things into a bucket, rather than actually thinking about quality material. Material is a better word. So rather than when you're writing a blog post to put on your website, rather than thinking of it as content, which feels like it's just something you're just creating to fill space, thinking of it as material, as something that's actually worthwhile, as an article. I like to call things articles rather than blog posts as well. Like, it just changes your perception of them. So obviously I come from an editorial background, and so the main thing I do at Tech North is telling stories. And there's lots of stories to be told about tech in the North. I think one of the major problems about why people aren't aware about what's happening in the North is that tech entrepreneurs in the North tend to just get on with what they're doing. They can be very, very good at what they're doing and very successful and have great businesses, but they don't think there's much point telling anyone about it. And I think that's quite a northern trait. Like, you just get on with it and you think, I'm not, forget all that fuzzy PR stuff, it doesn't matter, we can just have a successful business. And yes, that's great, that's the most important thing. But if you go out there and you tell your story, then you're encouraging other people to get involved in tech in your local area, which means hopefully more jobs and more people employing, more people interested in working, maybe for your company in the future, a more fertile ground for the future of tech in your area, and that can only be good for you as well. I was at an event in Newcastle recently where basically they'd woken up to this, and they basically organised a big initiative to encourage tech companies to talk about and shout about what they're doing. One person at the back put his hand up and said, I'm based in Newcastle, but my business is in Asia and America. I don't care about telling anyone in Newcastle what I'm doing. And it's like, well, no, if you do that, if you do tell people what you're doing, then you're getting more people to pay attention to Newcastle and move to Newcastle perhaps, or to stay in Newcastle if they're at university there. A common thing said about computer science graduates in Manchester is that too many of them finish their degree, get a great degree, they're really good at computer science, but then they disappear off to London or somewhere else because they think there aren't any jobs in Manchester. I think that perception is starting to change now. So yeah, we want to tell the stories about the companies that are doing really great things in the north of England. So if you've got an interesting company, if you're doing something that you think is something that's world class, or you have an interesting story about how you created your company, or you're just doing something differently, then I'd love to hear from you. And maybe we can tell your story in some way. At the moment, that's on the Tech North blog. It's a bit fiddly to get to. You have to go to technorthhq.com and then select blog, and then you can find everything we've written. But we're actually in the process of putting together what at the moment is being codenamed a content hub. We hate that, that for the reasons explained. But it will have a much better name when it launches. And that's basically going to be like a tech blog for the North. So the media in London, for example, they've got enough tech on their doorstep. They don't need to come up here, so they don't. And so you get some Tech City News. Recently, they published a documentary film. I've not watched it yet, but I saw they published a film about tech in Manchester. So that was great to see. In fact, I was in here a few months ago and I just bumped into the editor of Tech City News, which is thought to be a very London-centric publication. And she was like, I'm from the North originally, I want to know what's happening here. And she made the trip up here to find out. And people have started to pay attention to what's happening, but we need to keep pushing that and telling that story. So if we can create a publication that people can point at and go, that's where you find out what's happening in the North, then hopefully we'll get the Bloombergs and the mainstream press of this world to pay attention and to look north a lot more.
How best to get in touch with you?
Yes, that's a good question. Just before I was going to come up, I was going to put my details at the end, and I didn't quite have time to put that on the slide. Basically, if you can contact me on Twitter, I'm Martin SFP on Twitter, or you can just email me Martin at techcityuk.com, or just grab me during the break here. Just very briefly, I don't like a lot of text on slides, so I just pasted this in just to make sure I get it right. Don't worry about squinting to read it, or I'll very briefly explain it. So we recently got our new director of Tech North, and it really feels like we're really pushing forward now. There's some new initiatives and lots of new plans. So this is really, really good to see. He recently, Richard Gregory is his name, and he recently put together these 5 points about what we're going to be doing over the next year. So just to briefly summarise, raise the profile of the Northern tech sector and the companies within it by uniting the regions to tell one great story. create the central point of data on Northern Tech to support our initiatives around funding and skills. One area of the content we're doing will be a lot more data-led stuff, indexes of companies that do it well, that kind of thing, so that we can really find out who are the successful companies. Support the creation of a leading ecosystem for founders and entrepreneurs through access to funding, networking, training, and support for accelerators and co-working spaces. We had a meeting on Friday where we had lots of great ideas around that, so look out for stuff next year around that. Reduce the skills and talent gap in digital and tech by collaborating with tech employers both large and small, and assure the sustainability of Tech North and its initiatives by making sure we secure funding beyond 2018. One thing I want to stress, because some people worry about this sometimes, is we don't want to duplicate what other people are doing. We don't want to be, if there's some great organisation doing something fantastic, we don't want to say, oh, well, we're going to do loads of training. If there are lots of great training organisations, there's no point. We're here to fill in the gaps. And so we want to make sure that we can continue doing that. And it might be that we change what we do every 6 months, every 18 months, whatever, to make sure we meet the needs of the tech sector. But yes, one of the things we want to do is make sure that we can continue that beyond 2018 when our current government budget ends. I don't want to turn this into too much of a sales pitch, but I think it's worth knowing, people knowing what we're up to. We're also currently hiring for these roles, partnership manager for like salesy type stuff, community engagement manager for the Northwest. We've also been hiring in Yorkshire and Humber and the North East for that, but the Northwest role, we're still looking for people, and a multimedia content producer to do video, graphic design, things like that. So if you know anyone who might be good for those roles, let me know. And I'd just like to say thank you very much for listening. And come and grab me if you're doing something interesting, or you just want to know more about what Tech North is doing and what we might be able to do to help you. If you've got any ideas, if you think what we're doing is wrong, we should be going about things differently, I'd love to hear that as well. So thank you very much.